Hey everyone, today I'm going to tell the story of the Battle of the Delta. This battle took place around 1175 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, and it became one of the most important moments in Egypt's history. At this time, Egypt wasn't just dealing with local problems, it was facing a huge wave of incoming groups known together as the Sea Peoples. These people weren't just small bands of pirates. They came from many different places around the Mediterranean, and most of them were fleeing disaster. Their homes were hit by famine, war, or economic collapse. So they packed up their families and belongings, loaded their carts or ships, and set out to find a new place to settle. Some of them had traveled for months or even years, destroying cities along the way when they had no choice but to fight for survival. The Sea Peoples didn't attack Egypt all at once. Some came by land, but a huge part of the invasion was planned to come in through the sea. Ramesses III knew this and prepared for it. At his temple in Medinet Habu, he left long descriptions and carvings showing how he defended Egypt. He didn't take any chances. He ordered his soldiers to build a barrier made of tall spears along the shore so enemy ships couldn't land easily. This forced the enemy to stay trapped in the water, where Egyptian archers could shoot at them. The wall carvings at his temple show only a few ships on both sides, but historians think this was more about the artist keeping things simple, rather than showing the exact number. Even so, the carvings make it clear that Ramesses stayed safely on land while his archers, both on the shore and in the boats, fired non-stop at the incoming attackers. Because this was a water battle, Egyptian chariots, usually their strongest weapon, were completely useless. To prepare for this huge battle, Ramesses III gathered every type of boat he could find. He used normal Nile river boats, big cargo ships, and long-distance vessels meant for longer trips along the coast. He probably ordered people from all over Egypt to hand over their boats so the fleet would be large enough. In contrast, the Sea People's ships looked different in almost every way. Their ship designs came from the Aegean region, which meant they were built to handle long voyages over open sea. These ships had tall, straight ends and narrow bodies, so they could cut through the water quickly during long journeys. They weren't slow trading ships. They were tough, fast, and built for real travel. Some historians believe Ramesses III purposely waited until the Sea People's ships were close to the mouths of the Nile before attacking. Doing this would trap the enemy in a tight space, stuck between the land defenses and the oncoming Egyptian fleet. The carvings seem to support this idea because they show enemy ships bunched together, unable to move, and within perfect range of Egyptian archers. The enemy ships are shown sitting lower in the water, while the Egyptian vessels are drawn taller and bulkier. This might be artistic exaggeration, but it still shows how the Egyptians wanted to portray their strength. The Egyptian ships also had several interesting details. They had very tall backs and raised platforms, giving archers a higher spot to fire from and giving the helmsman better control. They had strong protective walls around the rowers, which was not something Egyptians originally used in their earlier boats. This feature came from northern ship designs, especially from Syria and Phoenicia. By this stage in history, Egypt was copying the shipbuilding styles of these regions because they needed stronger ships for long trips and military missions. Trouble along the Mediterranean coast was increasing, and Egypt had to be prepared for attacks just like this one. When you look closely at the carvings of the battle, the fighting looks extremely intense. Even though archery was one of Egypt's biggest strengths, a lot of the action shown involves close combat fighting. One group of Sea Peoples, the Shirdan, appear in the carvings both as enemies and as Egyptian soldiers fighting on the Pharaoh's side. This shows that some Shirdan had already joined Egypt's army as mercenaries before the battle even happened. The carvings show warriors jumping from ship to ship, smashing shields together, swinging swords, and capturing enemies by tying up their hands in wooden restraints. Many of the Sea Peoples fought with spears, thick swords, and round shields. Egypt, on the other hand, used many archers with composite bows, which had been one of the strongest weapons in their military for centuries. Most people imagine Egypt as a great naval power, but that wasn't usually the case. Egypt rarely fought sea battles. Their ships were mainly used to carry soldiers, equipment and supplies quickly from place to place. One earlier example comes from the time of Kamos, who used a fleet to quickly move troops during the war to push out the Hyksos from the north. But these were transport missions, not true sea battles. Things changed only when the Sea Peoples began causing major trouble. During the early years of Ramesses II's rule, Shirdan pirates raided Egypt's coastline. Ramesses defeated them and even recruited some of them into his army. But instead of building a stronger navy afterward, he focused more on building a chain of protective fortresses along the northern coast. By the time Ramesses III became king, everything had gotten much worse. In his 8th year as ruler, the Sea Peoples launched a massive movement across the Mediterranean. They destroyed entire cities and powerful empires. They attacked Cyprus, the Hittites, Carchemish, Syria, and parts of Palestine before heading straight toward Egypt. They weren't just raiding, they were migrating. Whole families traveled together. They came by land through the Sinai Desert, and they also came by sea, hoping Egypt would be the place where they could finally settle. Ramesses defeated the land attack first, and then prepared for the huge naval battle at the Delta. The carvings at Medinet Habu show how dramatic and overwhelming this sea battle was. The Sea Peoples fought on their tall-ended, sharp-fronted Aegean-style ships. The Egyptians used heavier vessels with more soldiers and more archers. One of the enemy ships is shown flipped over, with the bodies of Sea Peoples floating around it. Even though Egyptian art always tries to make Egypt look powerful, the real battle must have been chaotic and violent. Egypt won, but the victory didn't permanently solve the problem. Many groups of Sea Peoples continued moving and eventually settled along the coast of Canaan. By the end of the 20th dynasty, Egypt completely lost control of that region. After this period, Egypt mainly used its navy to protect trade routes instead of fighting wars. In the 26th dynasty, the kings of Say later built a powerful fleet modeled after Greek and Phoenician ships, to take back control of some eastern Mediterranean trade areas. But overall, throughout most of its history, Egypt relied mainly on its land army, archers, foot soldiers, and chariots, much more than ships. The Sea Peoples themselves were a mix of groups from different regions. The records at Medinet Habu mention groups that probably came from Greece, Western Anatolia, Sardinia, Sicily, and Crete. Many of these people once lived in strong, fortified towns and worked in copper mines, but disasters destroyed their societies. As they traveled, they conquered Cyprus, blocked trade ports, and caused major problems long before they ever reached Egypt. So when they finally arrived in the Nile Delta, they came not just as attackers, but as desperate families hoping for safety. Ramesses III couldn't allow Egypt to be taken over, so he set traps along the Nile branches, attacked them from both land and sea, and destroyed many of their groups. Those who survived were captured and forced into the Egyptian military or made slaves. But not all of them were defeated. One group, the Peliset, believed to be the Philistines, settled along the coast of Palestine and became a major power in that region long after Egypt's influence there had faded.